Hello, readers, and welcome to another One Chapter Wednesday. I'm going to continue spotlighting Sasquatch nominees, and today's story is Small Spaces by Katherine Arden. If you are a fan of creepy, supernatural middle grade novels, oh, this is perfect for you. It's the kind of book that you want to keep the lights on while you're reading it, because otherwise you might have a hard time getting to sleep. So let me set the stage a little bit. It is about a girl named Olivia, who has moved to a new town. Her mother has passed away, and she is still dealing with the grief of that. She has started at a new school since she's in a new town, and is having a bit of a hard time making friends. One day on the way home, she stops by the river and notices a woman there with a book. And the woman is trying to throw the book into the river and is having a hard time and is kind of talking nonsense to herself. And Olivia engages the woman in a conversation and manages to get the book, and starts reading it and can't stop reading it. It's a very creepy story about some people on a farm. And in the part I'm going to read to you, she is on a field trip to a local farm, and some unsettling things begin to happen. So enjoy this excerpt from Small Spaces. Outside, it was cool and windy. Ollie took a deep breath of not cow-smelling air. There was a vegetable garden behind the house full of runner beans and kale, turnips and carrots. She went inside. A garden after rain was much better than that echoing barn. Ollie loved gardens. Her mom always planted a garden in the summer. Ollie had been snacking from vegetable patches since she was old enough to chew. Ollie broke a broccoli flower out of its stalk and ate it happily. Munching, she wandered toward the middle of the garden. Three scarecrows stood in the very center, holding hands. They smiled big smiles at each other, their lips pierced with thread. The biggest scarecrow wore overalls. His smile was more like a snarl. A crow perched on his head. "Quack!" said the crow, beating its wings. "Great job you're doing," Ollie told the scarecrows. She bent for a rock, aimed just below the crow. She'd once made the mistake of aiming at a bird and never forgot how terrible she'd felt when she knocked it out of the air. She caught the scarecrow in the forehead. The crow flew up, unhurt, cawing indignantly as the scarecrow's head burst open. Ollie got a good look at what her rock had left: ripped open burlap, leaking straw, and below it the big yarn grin, unchanged. She shuddered and hurried away. To her left, she could see where the berry bushes grew in summer. To her right was the edge of the forest and the faint silver gleam of the creek. Ollie stepped into the forest. It was like a different world there, golden with autumn. Wet earth squished underfoot. It would be a good morning for mushrooms. Footsteps crunched in the leaves. "Hello?" Ollie called. Silence. Maybe she'd just heard a chipmunk. She went a little farther in. A stick cracked right next to her. She jumped and turned. No chipmunk. No one. But she caught sight of a small iron gate. Ollie went closer. The gate led to an old cemetery with graves tilted like bad teeth. Ollie put a hand on the gate. The hinges gave with a shrill whee. Ollie looked around to see if anyone had heard. No one had, of course. She was definitely alone. She tried to ignore the shivery feeling going up her spine. She slipped inside the cemetery. Green gravestones stood in messy rows with their inscriptions blurred by time. Ollie brushed dirt off the first. Ezekiel Hopkins, the first one read, born 1836, died 1869 of the falling of a tree. Sorry, Ezekiel, Ollie thought. She went on to the next. Fanny Collar, she read, November 11th, 1801 to June 28th, 1886. Wife of Amasa Piper, first white child born near this spot. God have mercy on your servant. That's a weird thing to be remembered for, thought Ollie. A big stone with a plaque and a long list of names. Dust to dust, it said, but they will rise up out of the ashes. The schoolhouse fire, Ollie thought. There is a memorial, after all. Then she spotted 3 headstones a little apart from the others, right against the tumble-down fence at the back. These 3 were in a cluster, one big and 2 smaller. They lay at awkward angles, as though someone had not taken care where they put them. Ollie, curious, went closer. Jonathan Webster, Elizabeth Webster, said the bigger one, died 1894. May the dead lie quiet. Ollie frowned. Caleb Webster, said the headstone on the left. Catherine Webster, said the headstone on the right. Ollie's fingertips got cold. 4 graves, 3 stones, said a raspy voice, but only 2 sets of bones. Ollie squeaked, jumped, and whirled. The bus driver stood behind her. Where had he come from? The ground was thick with dead leaves. They should have rustled. Alone in the woods, the bus driver's red lips, his mushroom gray skin, and his sideways grin weren't just strange. They scared her. Yeah, said Ollie, heart beating fast. Sorry, I got lost. Was just heading back. She trailed off. The bus driver did not react. Ollie's heart beat faster and faster. The driver began to whisper, and it took Ollie a moment to realize he was murmuring in sing-song. On a fair and sunny day, 2 grown boys went out to play. All day they ran and ran, but only one went home. Ollie stepped back again. Another step and she'd be leaning on Kathy Webster's tilted grave. But, John, my dear, said their kind mother, where on earth is your little brother? Don't know? Oh, foolish child. Enough nonsense. You are exiled till you bring him home for supper. Ollie didn't know what to say. The 3 gravestones loomed in her imagination, big as barns at her back. I like poems, she said, a little at random, talking to keep herself from being frightened. I memorized one from a book I liked, The Grey King. On the Day of the Dead, no, said the bus driver. Something cold and flat in his voice silenced Ollie. Her heart was going rabbit fast now, with the iron fence of the graveyard behind her and the bus driver in front. Listen, girl, said the driver. Listen. There's no time. 4 graves, 3 stones, 2 sets of bones. But all 4 souls unquiet. The mist comes off the creek when the year's turning and... What on earth? Said a new voice. The bus driver went still, except that his tongue shot round just once and licked his red lips. Seth, the pale-haired farmhand, was standing at the gate of the graveyard. Is he scaring you? He asked Ollie. He had his hands in his pockets. He didn't raise his voice, but the bus driver was backing up. Never mind, said the driver, his voice almost a whine. Just telling this little inquisitive one some history. Nothing wrong with history. Seth raised a pale brow. Nothing at all wrong with history. The bigger problem is cornering a kid in a graveyard. Seth's voice was completely ordinary, comforting. Ollie felt the little scared knot inside her begin to ease. Go on, said Seth to the driver. I'll walk her back. Without another word, the bus driver hunched his shoulders and hurried out the gate and up the road. Got tired of Cora, did you? Seth asked her. Still breathless with fright, Ollie managed. It was noisy in there. Well, you'll have that, said Seth. Kids and all. He waved Ollie out of the graveyard and shut the gate behind them. Ollie, looking at the back of his head, wondered why she was stuck with brown hair when some people got unlikely shades of blonde. Is it true? Ollie asked as they walked. Seth turned to her with a face politely questioning. What the bus driver said. Are there only 2 bodies buried in those 3 graves? She pointed to the 3 at the back of the graveyard. Seth's glance sharpened. He said that? I'm going to really have to make sure that guy stops lurking around. Use your head. How would he know who's buried down there? It's not like we're running around digging up 100-year-old graves, just for the sake of ghost stories. So there is a ghost story? When Seth smiled, it softened the angular bones of his face. Ollie found herself warming to him. Come on, kid, said Seth. There's always a ghost story. Look around. How long have people lived on this land? There's us, yeah, but before us, there were those people in that graveyard back there. Fanny Collar. You saw her, right? On her grave, it says that she married the first white child born in Evansburg. Why do you think that was even a thing? Because before them, there was the Abenaki, and they had this land and farmed it and died on it and wrote their own ghost stories, while people died of plague in the streets of London. Seth's eyes were far away. So yes, there is always a ghost story. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Wherever you go in this big, gorgeous, hideous world, there is a ghost story waiting for you. Maybe made up, or maybe not. But that's no excuse for that guy to lurk around graveyards and scare kids. They were getting to the edge of the wood. Ollie could see the scarecrows peeking over the carrot tops in the vegetable garden. You should probably stay out of graveyards this close to Halloween, said Seth. I think the others are in the horse barn. He gave her a push in the right direction and started off toward the cornfield, whistling. So much for sneaking off. She couldn't very well say she'd gotten lost now. Ollie headed toward the horse barn. In the normal light of the barnyard, Ollie was less sure that something weird was going on. Miss Webster probably had a well hidden mental illness that made her panic and throw books into rivers. Or maybe she just hated books. The author of Small Spaces had probably visited the farm once. She had seen the graves, heard the story, gotten inspired. That was the only logical explanation. The bus driver was standing at the edge of the vegetable garden. She had to walk past him. Ollie lifted her chin and stiffened her spine. Linda Webster is maybe crazy, and this guy certainly is, but Seth is nice, the sun is shining. They're still waiting, you know, whispered the driver as Ollie went by. Beth and Kathy, you can hear them crying at night or calling the boys, but they don't answer. Ollie gave up all pretense of coolness and ran toward the horse barn. Oh, so good. So good. If that sounds like a book you want to read more of, you can probably find it at your local public library, your school library, or your independent bookseller. Remember, as you go out in the world, be kind, have fun, and read a whole heck of a lot. Thanks so much for joining me. Happy reading.